Hello students, this is Professor McDermott with your video introduction to Module 6. Well, let's recap the discussions from Module 5 on the Industrial Revolution. Group 1, you had Adam Smith, an excerpt from his very important book, The Wealth of Nations. And it's interesting that even though Adam Smith is seen as the prophet of modern capitalism, one of the architects of the modern business world, he actually is somewhat harsh in The Wealth of Nations on businessmen, and you picked up on this very correctly in your answer to question 1 posted by Riva. You said the group was in agreement that business owners were more interested in increasing their profits over benefiting society, and Adam Smith makes that very clear. The interests of business owners are not always in sync with the common good of the whole society. However, Adam Smith believes that in spite of that, business people, by pursuing profit, by pursuing their own self-interest, do ultimately wind up benefiting society, kind of unwittingly. And your answer captured this very well. Business people, in promoting their own profits and their own interests, by increased profits and production, promoted society. The businessman is only out for himself, but the work done by the wage earner to increase the profits of the businessman benefits society. So what Adam Smith calls this is the invisible hand. He says that even though capitalists are only out for their own self-interest, there's something called an invisible hand that somehow regulates all of the self-interest and transforms it into something that's actually good for the whole society. So it's a very important argument, and I think you guys grasped it very well. And I also liked your answer to question 3, Group 1. So nice job, Riva, and Group 1. Group 2 had the other perspective. It was an account by a journeyman cotton spinner. So this would have been someone who worked as a journeyman in the old-fashioned workshop alongside the master and the apprentices. And he's describing the onset of the factory system and how this is destroying that old way of life and how people are sinking down into the working class and being put to work in horrible conditions in these new factories. And you might ask the question, from the modern perspective, well, if someone didn't like working in a factory, if they didn't like the conditions, why didn't they just quit and go work at a factory that had better working conditions? And you guys hit the nail on the head in your answers posted by Latasha. Excellent job, Latasha, as chair. We were all able to agree that the reason that a worker could not just simply leave his current master was because the new master would not hire him. All the masters worked together and would not accept a new worker unless he was discharged by his previous master. And so, in a sense, there was a blacklist, and all the factory owners worked together to make sure that if someone quit one factory, that he would never, or she would never get hired at another factory. So, in a sense, these workers were trapped where they were. It was their only means of livelihood. In fact, the journeyman cotton spinner goes so far as to say that English factory workers are actually worse off than West Indian slaves. And I asked you to comment on that claim, say whether you agreed or disagreed. Interestingly, most of the group members seem to agree with the cotton spinner that the slaves were actually better off, although there was a good, lively discussion about this, and several people disagreed. But his argument is simply that, at least the slaves are outside in the fresh air and sunshine. They're not cooped up for 14 hours a day inside a factory doing the same repetitive thing all day. So good discussion on that. But finally, I asked you for your third question. Given that workers during the Industrial Revolution suffered so much, would it have been better to just keep things the way they were, the old workshop system, and not industrialize? I mean, if people were happy with that, why not just keep it the way it was? And you guys really grappled with this question very nicely. And I think a lot of people were very sympathetic to the sufferings of the workers, but at the same time, you saw that without the Industrial Revolution, we wouldn't have a lot of things that we think make our lives better today, like the cell phone I'm videoing this on, like the computer you're watching this on, and so forth. You wouldn't be able to take online classes. And the Industrial Revolution led to all that. So I liked your discussion. Skylar, I liked your post a lot. You said, industrialization was a great thing for future generations. However, it was very unfortunate for people going through the transition period because they were not able or needed to work the machines, and the trade they had studied and worked to perfect their whole life was taken from them. The term that best describes industrialization is necessary evil. So I like that. It was an evil in a sense, but perhaps it was a necessary evil. Good job, Group 2. Group 3 had a slightly different topic on British expansion. When the Chinese government was protesting the British sale of opium to the Chinese people, an official named Commissioner Lin wrote a letter to Queen Victoria to protest the sale of opium. I can't list your answers, Group 3. There was a little bit of a train wreck because your chair was AWOL, and as always happens when the chair is not participating, the whole group suffers. But those of you who did post, I thought, did do a good job. Basically, you pointed out that Commissioner Lin in his letter implies that all of the prosperity of the British Empire is due to their trade with China. So you see a little bit of that Chinese self-confidence that they think they're the greatest nation in the world, and the British are just kind of coming up because the Chinese have deigned to help them with their trade. And you correctly pointed out, as some of you, that Queen Victoria probably wouldn't have liked that argument or responded to it very well. But Commissioner Lin makes a very interesting argument where he says, look, Chinese, we export things to Britain that are harmless and useful, like porcelain and silk and tea, but you're exporting to us this terribly harmful and destructive drug, opium. Is that fair? And I think that's a powerful argument that he makes. But unfortunately, the British were not going to listen to that because they were trying to improve their balance of trade with China. They were tired of sending China lots of money for tea, especially. And they wanted a product they could trade to China to kind of even out that balance. And so they were determined and even fought 2 wars to continue selling opium to the Chinese. So key part of their expansion into the greatest empire in the history of the world. All right, so thank you everyone for your contributions to Module 5 discussions. Module 6 discussions focus on the issue of nationalism, and each group has a different document on that topic, so I'm looking forward to see what you do with those. The 6th day of Module 6 is Monday, October 17th, so in order to have a chance at full credit for these discussions, please make your 3 initial posts by 11:59 p.m. on Monday, October 17th. Chairs for this module are for Group 1, Brittany Floyd, for Group 2, Tanya Moody, and for Group 3, Kamaya Wilson. If you're not sure, chairs, what that entails, please contact me. I'll be happy to fill you in. The full drafts of your essays are due on the last day of this module, that is October 24th at 11:59 p.m. So this is following up on your article assignment. You're now going to write the full draft of the essay. The full instructions, of course, are posted in Module 2. And in Module 5, I've posted a folder called Videos on MLA Formatting so that you can refresh your memory if you're a little rusty on how to do MLA formatting. One note, for history papers, we like to have in-text citations, not just for direct quotes, but really for any important fact that you take from your sources. We're a little finicky that way, but readers of history papers like to know where that information is coming from so they can trace those facts back to the sources and check them out. So please, you're going to need a lot of in-text citations for this. Of course, if you have 3 or 4 facts that come from the same source right in a row, you can combine those into one in-text citation. But when you switch back and forth between sources, you're going to want to make sure the reader knows where each bit of information came from which source. Let me know if you have any questions about that. And finally, even though your second exam is not going to be open until the period of November 4th through November the 8th, it's never too early to start thinking about how you're going to get that exam proctored and to start making arrangements, for example, with ProctorU if you plan to use them. The study guide for the exam is posted in Module 6, so don't overlook that. That's it for tonight. Looking forward to working with you in Module 6. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.